put this person in charge of a lot of people that I trusted and worked with for years, and it didn't work out. He wasn't the right fit.
Yep.
That is my issue. But removing that person, getting someone else in that makes sense, I just waited too long.
Yep.
Right. And too long, now I can sniff it out in like 6 weeks of someone being there.
Right.
Too long was like 6 months. And the drag on 6 months for a company that's only around for 5 years before exit, that's a huge deal. So,
absolutely.
yes.
Yeah.
Just a question. Was this a friend of yours? Someone you knew before? Was this a friend or someone that you
I went to business school with this individual. So we were friendly.
Yeah.
And I have a huge trust of people I went to business school with. And he's doing well. But the role that we had and what we wanted to take charge of just wasn't a good fit. So he was excited because we were fast and growing. I was excited because he was a trusted ally and we had lots of friends. But it was interesting. A lot of the things that I didn't see came out after people.
Welcome to the Founders Journey podcast. Inspiration, education for founders by founders. Welcome back to the Founders Journey podcast. Actually, a rare live session today, becoming less rare, but these are always way more fun. With our guest today, Steve Gilman. Steve is CEO and founder of a company called OneRange. We're down in New York City actually today, so based down here. I kid about Steve, and you'll find this out in a second. If you remember, this probably dates me a little bit, but if you remember the old Dos Equis commercial, "The Most Interesting Man on the Planet," that is Steve Gilman. You'll understand why. Great journey as a founder, really interesting stuff. So we're going to get into that. We're going to get into that today on this episode. And Peter, welcome back. I know we've had a few recordings this week. You had to actually fly solo yesterday, so it was a big day for Peter yesterday.
Yeah, I didn't do the intro like you do. I'm not practiced like that. But I did have a great conversation yesterday while you were on a plane you weren't supposed to be on at the time.
I was on a plane I was supposed to be on. I just wasn't still supposed to be on it. Was actually the problem.
You weren't supposed to be on the plane at that time. But it was fun. But I'm looking forward to this. And I am not in New York today, as you'll see if you're on YouTube.
So Steve, just want to start off like this. CEO, founder of a company called OneRange. Kind of take us back. You've had a real journey as a founder. Tell us about kind of how you got to where you are today. Take us back a little bit because it's I know there's been a few interesting stops along the way.
Yeah, thanks. Excited to be here, Greg, Peter. Thanks for having me on the show. So I guess it starts with kind of a professional career that has a bit of some non-traditional winding paths to it. So I was a student athlete in college. I came out and my first role was professional baseball. I was a closing pitcher in the Tigers organization after being drafted right after graduation. You can argue I didn't have a job for the first 3 years because I was doing that. I was playing a game, but it was competitive. I did a couple odd jobs in off season, worked mostly as a engineer with Johnson & Johnson as a contractor, spent some time more or less in the corporate world where it was safe so that when I went back to the professional season, I had some money saved up because you certainly don't make any in the minors. After a few injuries and a little bit of boredom, I decided to go on to my next step in my career. So at the age of 24, 25, I went into the Department of Defense. I worked as an intelligence officer for the Defense Intelligence Agency and wanted to get involved in something larger than what was on the field or that I had studied for in college. Spent about 3-4 years doing that. Served overseas as a diplomat, had some really great experiences marrying my engineering background with kind of a passion for national security. And then I decided, what's next? I went back to business school to get the tools and the trades I didn't have necessarily from undergrad. And I got addicted to hanging out with startups. So I went to school here in New York, Columbia Business School, and every Friday we have off. So Thursday is the big day before the weekend. Friday you get to explore or do group projects or what have you. Every Friday I spent my time with a group in New York. Early days of SeatGeek when they would invite you to the office, the early days of some really great companies. And I just started getting more and more energy towards that. So throughout my business school career, the 2 years, I spent less time interviewing for McKinsey, which is what I thought I wanted to do with my life, and more time just getting the energy of engineers and passionate founders and people trying to do something a little bit different. Coming out of business school, day after graduation, I called up the corporate job that I had taken months earlier. I said, I'm not coming. And I started a company with a co-founder out of Texas and built that company. And that's where I started my entrepreneurial career. So the only thing that kind of satisfied my thirst for creativity and continuous learning and making an impact on the world was entrepreneurship.
Right.
I just didn't know it till I was about 30 years old, right? And at that point, I had enough confidence with my skills that it wasn't a huge risk to start at that point in my life. And so built my first company, Block Party, started in 2015. And since then, I've been an entrepreneur. One Range is about 2.5 years old. And started that with my co-founder and CTO, Hutan, who had an equally interesting winding path of starting companies. But we came together here in New York to build this one, and we're proud of it.
Before we get into One Range, we're going to get there in a second. How did you, just real quick, what did Block Party do?
Yeah.
What was kind of what was the outcome there?
Yeah. So Block Party is
Sounds like a fun business, by the way.
It is a fun business. It married my hobby. So I talked about this in the early days. I love tailgating like Division I footballs, and I did not go to a big school. So tailgating for me was going out to Penn State and a lot of big schools that my friends went to.
Right.
I just thought it was an incredibly genuine experience. Here in 2024, it's one of the only places you put down your phone and just enjoy time with other people, right? Camaraderie around your team, the rival team, what's going to happen. And so we actually built a live event business that elevated hospitality across Division I football tailgating, ended up being professional as well, and then other live events, which includes live music. And it so happens that live music season, at least the outdoor season that you find in the amphitheaters, is the exact season that the football schedule is not, and the football schedule is the exact season that the music is not. So our goal was to go in and elevate hospitality, make it turnkey for folks that love those pregame, postgame, pre-band experiences. And we built that. I mentioned I quit the corporate job I was getting out of. I actually accepted a job with IBM in their general management leadership development program. Very corporate path, really good for the resume. And I told them I wasn't coming, but only after selling about $500,000 of contracts before I left school.
Right.
So I'm an engineer by trade, pretty risk adverse. And I begged IBM to keep the job open for the next 6 months in case this startup didn't work out. It did work out.
How did that go? What did they say? What did they say when you asked that?
Business schools have an office that's in charge of helping with recruiting.
Right.
It's a big metric.
Yeah.
So I had to apologize. I sent a note to the CEO of IBM, Jenny Remedy at that time. I had to apologize profusely to everyone that recruited me, gave me a job offer, and had me accept it. And then I had to go and apologize to Columbia Business School, the Career Management Center, and write another letter and say, sorry, you're reneging on an opportunity. And you what you did is you took someone else's spot, right? So in this program, there's 10 people globally. One comes from our school almost every year. And I took someone else's spot because I wasn't the only person
You took
interviewed.
the one spot.
I took the
And then
spot.
you said, yeah, you know what? I actually don't want to do this.
Yeah. Now, the trick of the trade, it doesn't happen often, but if you sign up with a consulting firm or accounting firm, you get your bonus up front. IBM did not give me a bonus until I started, which was the next fall. Anyway, I was a diplomat in my past career, right? So I understood the implications, and IBM was great. They actually said, look, it's not like you were looking for another job or interviewing after you took our job. You were actually just chasing a passion, and the reason we recruited you is because we feel you're entrepreneur, right? Like we want our general managers, head of a business line, to be entrepreneurs. So they actually wrote an article. They said, sorry, we can't hold your spot, but like no harm, no foul. This is actually a good thing for everyone, and we wish you the best of luck. And I still hold those relationships today.
Interesting.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool. So, I won't get into it. What, like, are they really looking for an entrepreneur? Like, really? They think they are? Like, IBM,
They call
we
them
want entrepreneurs.
right?
Like, I don't know if that's what you want. Like, really?
Right. Entrepreneurs, the corporate thing,
Yeah.
right? We want you to own a P&L and pretend to be an owner, but you only have so many options in the company, so you're never going to feel the rewards, especially at a larger company. So while they take care of you, the folks that want to get out of the corporate world are steering clear of companies like IBM just
Yeah.
Yeah.
knowing there's something more out there.
I love the term entrepreneur, right? Because there's no like bigger bullshit term on the planet than entrepreneur. It's just so funny. It's like, okay, we want you to be an entrepreneur, but we're going to pay you your benefits, your salary. You're like, they're going to, you've got all of this stuff coming from this large company, right? But we want you to be entrepreneurial. Well, that's exactly the definition of not entrepreneurial, right? It's always comical when you hear companies talk about that.
I'm sure we'll get into it with some of the things that happen in startups, but when someone brands themselves as a entrepreneur, right? Like, what does that mean in a corporate world? I'm just not responding to my boss within the next 3 hours because I think there's something more important.
Right.
It's still showing up to a place of comfort and trying to do your best work, but there's no feeling, and I can confidently tell you this after 8 years of being a startup founder, there's no feeling like having your back against the wall or having complete ownership where you're the last person on this earth that cares as much as you do to build a business.
Right.
That just functionally can't happen.
We're definitely going to talk about that because there's a big difference. That's a good segue. What passion led you to One Range? And just tell us what One Range is too, but then go back to that passion because you just flashed how you use that to kind of get through all the hard things.
Yeah. So One Range is an intelligent upskilling marketplace. We basically help companies remove the barriers to invest in their employees. All right. And we do it through upskilling, building new skills, something that's very much demanded by employees that companies haven't had the software tools to get right. And so we work with a lot of tech companies, agencies, consultancies across the globe to make sure that every dollar they deploy to an employee's upskilling gets used, is transparent, and people get what they need so that they can help the company, the business, right? And it's a new age kind of platform. We'll get into it more, but it's a marketplace vice a bundled subscription, which has traditionally been used for professional development. The passion for this, and I'll tie a little bit of right, because there's two of us that started the company, right? And so all the passions in the world come together, but when you find the right person, it kind of clicks. So two things kind of happened in my past that when I was looking to start another company, put it together very clearly for me that this was a huge issue and something we could have a big impact on. The first is when I was with the Department of Defense, I was a really good employee, high potential, great marks, mission driven, all that stuff. So they wanted to invest in me. Mm-hmm. They had a great program, tuition reimbursement. They sent me to a part-time school over 2 years at night, like 2.5 years, to get a master's in management. It was kind of like a project management degree, but you get some of the accounting and corporate finance stuff that I lacked. There was lots of issues with the program.
Right.
One, you didn't get to choose where you went to school. So they said, you're going here and you're doing it remote. Two, there was so many administration headaches where I had to front money, where people that had it on paper would shift jobs and they wouldn't have records for it evermore. So every semester over the 10 semesters I was there was a fight to get it paid.
Right.
And because it wasn't a school or a program of exactly my choice, I was kind of given two options. It wasn't something I was passionate enough to invest in myself. In other words, I would not pay for this degree.
Right.
I don't list it on LinkedIn, by the way.
Right.
Because all it did was get me interested in learning more about business elsewhere and investing in myself. So first thing I saw was as an employee, my company's trying to invest in me. They're going to spend a lot of money, but there's headaches. It was a turnoff and it wasn't what I wanted.
Right.
Cool. So there's issues with that. Next, I'm running my company, Block Party, and we have probably 30, 40 full-time employees. And one of my best employees comes up to me. She was a marketing manager and said, hey, I researched a school. I'd love to go to take this one class, completely related to her job. It was at SMU. We were down in Dallas. I said, fantastic. I'm a co-founder of the company, right? I can do whatever I want. I think investing in your people is fantastic. So I say, message your manager, send him all the information, CC the controller, make sure there's enough money at the time of funding, get into the class, put it on your personal card. When you get an A or a B, go ahead and send your boss, his name was Aaron, right, another note, CC me, I'll make sure it gets reimbursed right away. That was a company policy that I had seen before that I made up on the spot because I wanted her to get the right course. That is a slog of administration. It's a 4 months of having a personal reimbursement out,
yep,
which is not a small amount for someone. And guess what? She never took the course, right? She left that conversation saying, I appreciate it. I have a job to do. And she did get promoted and she was fantastic. But I go back to that day and say, like, what if I had a better answer? What if there was a tech solution that not only made it easier for me and for her? So as an operator and an owner, I saw that there was a burden. And maybe the tuition reimbursement I experienced in the past is a function of not having the right technology in kind of a older industry. What if we could just layer that in that made sense? And the capstone of it all, when I decided I wanted to start a new company, I wanted to work with the best co-founder and CTO I know, Hutan. And he had a similar experience with tuition reimbursement. Lockheed Martin paid for his Columbia Master's. It's not a cheap degree. But they had that policy that I told Morgan about. Put it on your personal card. Go ahead and we'll reimburse you. By the way, Hutan's never got less than an A in a computer science course, right? So he was literally waiting for reimbursement through all this. And guess what? He left to become an entrepreneur because that's where you learn the most. So we got together. We said, this is a huge issue. That the technology and the data is now here for us to start building this the right way. And if we can align companies, employees, and even providers, holy cow, like we're solving a lot of problems that people just didn't know they have. And so we inherently don't believe there's a learning motivation issue. We believe there's a data and technology issue. And that's what we're solving.
And I think, it's interesting, right? Because you look at like, one of the things you hear HR departments, this disconnect within a company, and then you hear the HR department, right? Of like employees, especially sort of younger generation employees, right? Will say like, there's no development resources here. There's no, I'm not getting the support I need to advance my career. I'm not getting these things. Then you talk to an HR department and the HR department is saying, what are you talking about? There's all of these things, right? It's that misalignment. One, it's a perception misalignment. And two, it's because it's a giant pain in the ass, right? It's you're sticking 50 grand on your credit card, or there's all of these things that just don't make any sense for a standard employee to be able to
exactly what your parents told you not to do.
Right. That's right. Run up a huge credit card.
Hey, my company's paying for a degree, right? It's going to be $12,000 a semester. I'm going to put it on a card that I don't really have much more space on and then hope I get reimbursed. And is the company really investing in you? Especially you're working there during that time, right? So not only do you have a financial burden, is that really an investment if they need to know that you have an A at the end of the class? So something else has to exist.
It's a lot of pressure.
The thing I love about this, and just kind of full disclosure, I'm an investor in OneRange. The thing that I love about this and what really caught my interest in at Evergreen Mountain, our venture fund, that problem is universal, right? That problem that you're trying to solve of just being able to put tools in the hands of an individual to say, own your own development, right? The company will reimburse, but we're going to make it super easy to be able to do this. We'll get you paid up front, have companies fund it up front and do these things. But ultimately, it's about the individual accountability for owning their own development. And I think that's a fundamental shift, and especially fundamental when you start to see like a move to freelancers and things like that, and the way that the labor market is shifting on a global level.
Inherently, you're going to find that top talent is always searching for new learning tools, right? And they may be trying to do it for free, right? Because the internet's out there. They may be paying for it themselves. They may be speaking up and asking their manager for it, where 95% of people wouldn't at their company.
But
there's two kind of things that we see don't hit the mark, and we know it's an old industry. One, misalignment with HR, right? Here's all the tools you could ever want. Deploy it to employees, and employees don't use it. Right? So the KPIs are off from what they're being sold on and what's actually happening. The other thing is tuition and reimbursement, especially in the eyes of the IRS or any kind of government regulation. The tax-free ability for a company to reimburse somebody for skills necessary to their job. No one needs to use the word tuition anymore. We do because it's in policies. You don't need to go back to grad school to learn skills that you need in your job right now. So we specifically, yes, we had issues with going back to graduate programs. We specifically, business model-wise, target on what is more professional development, short-form courses that come with certificates, live coaching, cohort-based learning, conferences. These are things that companies already do that aren't in the hands of HR. So imagine taking all the dollars flowing out to learning and skills that people get, but now making HR the hero so they can go back to the company and say, this is how we're actually doing it, right? We don't need all these subscriptions. We don't need to try to build it in-house. And with a soft provider market, it just makes it easy to make a tech platform.
Yep.
But that's it. Like the employees matter, and the HR folks and people op folks that know the employee matters, who get us first.
Yep. Absolutely. So I want to go back to your entrepreneurial career for a second, right? So you've had multiple businesses now. If you think about it, reflecting back, what are the biggest mistakes you've made along the way that you'd share with other founders?
Yeah, I think every big mistake, and a lot of it has to go for recruiting and hiring, right?
Yeah.
And you'll get tons of advice in this throughout the path from lawyers, from other professionals, from other founders. Recruiting is really hard, and you're able to spot it as someone who's not involved in it day to day, because there's so many emotions tied to it. So if a founder friend came up to me and said, this employee's not working out, here's the behavioral patterns, this is what it looks like, this is the drag on the company, you're able to spot it pretty quick. If you're in the situation and you hire someone that you believe in or that you need at the moment, it's a tougher situation to get out of, to be fair to you and that person. So one of the bigger issues that we've had, maybe not business impact wise, but gut wrenching wise,
right?
It hasn't been about the money or the sale or losing a strategic opportunity. It has to do with the people management. And so I hired a really smart individual that was really close. Resume was off the charts. Put this person in charge of a lot of people that I trusted and worked with for years, and it didn't work out. He wasn't the right fit.
Yep.
That is my issue. But removing that person, getting someone else in that makes sense, I just waited too long.
Yeah.
Right. And too long, now I can sniff it out in like 6 weeks of someone being there.
Right.
Too long was like 6 months. And the drag on 6 months for a company that's only around for 5 years before exit, that's a huge deal. So,
absolutely. Yeah.
Greg, that's really fast compared to what I know about you.
What's that, 6 months?
Yeah, 6 months.
Yeah, I
quick,
prefer
man.
to actually wait around for like 6 years before making decisions like that. Sometimes. Yeah.
No, because this is super important. You had two things. I think one is it's so hard because like the founders are passionate. You obviously are. You care about the people. You want them to be on your journey. You want to inspire them. They're inspired when they show up, and then it doesn't work out. That's such a hard thing to deal with.
Yeah.
Like that is not. It's not trivial. You know, it really isn't.
No, it's not. And you know, one of the things, and Peter's busting on me because I'm like horrible at ever.
Because he loves the people so much.
Right, yeah, exactly. But the
it.
thing, you know, the thing is, and you just hit on a really important point. It's so much easier when people outside the company are looking at it and saying, "What are you doing? Like that dude is
right.
Like that is just not working, right?" But when you're in it, it's so easy to just make the excuses for no, it's not them, it's me. It's I haven't given them proper instructions. I haven't trained them. I haven't, done whatever. And I'm a huge, obviously, proponent of learning and development and onboarding and training and doing all the things you're supposed to do.
Right.
But the bottom line is, if I'm honest about it, I can probably sniff it out in 6 hours, but it will take me 6 years to do something, right? And I think that's a common thing among founders. We tend to be so optimistic in our sort of outlook toward the world and toward people, right? You have to be.
Right.
That it's hard. You get in those situations.
I mean, let's look at the dynamic of hiring someone and putting them in a place higher than a lot of people that you trust and work with for years. Right? So say this person's in charge of the marketing department. You've worked with these people for years. You trust them, even if they have less experience in the world. You put that person in charge. No one from that marketing team is going to come up to you and say, "Hey, I think this is a bad fit.
Right.
You did a bad job interviewing. You're too close to this person to understand that it's not going to work out."
Yep.
A co-founder will do that. So when I say 6 months, that's after let's change out managers, let's change roles, let's talk to the clients to see if they have the right expectations.
Right.
Let's try to talk to our team more to see if they'll divulge
Yep.
if things are going wrong. But it's always the co-founder that says, "Great, it's a drag on the business. We need to look at this clearly, and let me support you through getting rid of this person," right? Because a lot of times it comes down to you don't want that day to come where you have to let someone go. Even if you know it's good for them, they need to move on too, right? They're not going to be successful there. That's when you look at a co-founder.
Sleepless nights, man. It really is.
It's never about the finances and the traditional business stuff on paper. I think it's always about the people management.
Right.
because it's hard to align. But a co-founder with an equal level, equal incentive in the business should be able to step in and say, man, we should have done this 3 months ago.
Yep.
I'll support you and let's do this now.
Yeah. And
So
having
Steve, just a question: was this a friend of yours, someone you knew before? Was this a friend or someone that
Yeah.
you?
I
had
went to
known
business
that-
school with this individual. So we were friendly.
Yeah,
And I
Yeah.
have a huge trust of people I went to business school with. And
Yeah.
he's doing well, but the role that we had and what we wanted to take charge of just wasn't a good fit. So he was
Right.
excited because we were fast and growing. I was excited because
Yeah.
he was a trusted ally and we had lots of friends. But it was interesting. A lot of the things that I didn't see came out after people that I was closer to found out that he worked for us and didn't work out. And then they started
Yeah.
saying, well, yeah, I could see that in his
is that
background.
not
This happened.
like that happened, and then the employees are like, well,
Yeah, and then the
I mean,
employees
it's like after no one gives you the information. Why don't they give us the information? Like,
because
to
they
your point,
can't,
you
Peter.
made this
They
point.
they can't, right? Because what do you really get? What are you really
Yeah.
saying, right?
Yeah.
Steve did a really crappy job of interviewing that guy,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
You really have bad decision making skills.
Yep.
Right?
So the
you
way
may
we,
you
yeah.
may have just killed the company.
You were blind when you
I'm
didn't.
gonna
see
go
cats.
grab lunch. I'm
Yeah,
good. Right.
That's right. And so this rings true entirely. And the team that we had worked with for a while, like I trust wholeheartedly. Right, we're in
Yeah.
the trenches with them. A few things happened. Once we let this person go, everyone then came out, and maybe over a drink or two or like a coffee chat,
Yeah.
would say like, by the way, every time you left the room, his attitude changed.
Right.
Right, because he had some
Yeah.
so. And the other thing is the day of that we had worried about and we had talked to lawyers about and how to do this right, and the gut-wrenching day, my co-founder went up to one of our employees and said, hey, I'm going to give you a couple $100, take everyone to Starbucks right now,
Mhm.
right? And just keep them there for an hour. And this individual knew what was going to happen. We wanted a
Right.
calm moment with the
Yeah.
person that we had to tell them to
Yeah.
move on. And they were excited. They grabbed, like, I thought it'd be like, oh, we're going to lose a teammate. And like,
Right.
grab the card, everybody, let's go. We got a 2-hour break. And when we come back, things are going to be different. And there was an air of like, thank God they're doing something. And
Yeah.
that's what you feel like, holy crap, I've been putting a team I trust in a bad situation
Yeah.
for 3 to 4 months.
Yeah.
Yes.
My job
And
was
it's
to
not-
relieve them of this. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not always the fault of this person, right? And that's the hardest part that you have to bear as someone that hired him. And you actually said another thing that was really interesting. You said, because I need them right now. I
Mhm.
need this support right now. We've heard that before, where you hire for this moment and you're not planning. And then you're like, well, that moment's now gone. And this person's still here. Like, now what?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. A while ago, I wrote a book. This is back a decade ago, and one of the things we talked about in it was the book was called Hire, Fire, and The Walking Dead. Somewhere there's probably a copy, somewhere that can be.
I've got one for you.
but we talked in the book about this concept of like a desperation hire, right? And 9 times out of 10, that's where all of these things come from. It's that I needed this person, right? I needed this role filled. The worst hires I've ever made, the most catastrophic hires I've ever made, have all resulted from that same thing.
Right.
I need to fill the role. The person almost becomes secondary. You'd never articulate it like that, but that's what ends up happening.
Yeah. This was, I'll take it a step further and make it really tangible. We were doing a strategic deal with a large company. And so there had to be someone like a liaison in place that wasn't a co-founder. And we were a small team. And the idea was to act like a blowfish so that
Right.
we're larger, right? So they feel like there's some stability there. And so
Yeah.
we actually flashed this person's resume in front of the coordinator for M&A,
Right.
for that group. Like,
Yeah.
here is the person that we're bringing in. Not only are we small and innovative, we have the ability to recruit great. This is the person that's coming on. They're onboarding in a month.
Yeah.
And although we think the offer signed and all of that stuff, that had to be done, in our opinion, to make that group feel comfortable. Now, when it comes to having that person move on, there's also an essence of like, guess who's in charge of all the work that hasn't been going on or picking up the slack.
Right.
Now, 100% of the time behind all the doors in my career, when we let someone go, there's a disappointing amount of work they haven't been doing. So
Right.
it's actually not that hard. Plus, you get a cultural boost when
Right.
you remove someone like that everybody steps into the role. But it is a fear.
Yeah.
It says, if we could just get another
Gonna
month
break.
and then maybe situation will improve, we won't have to pick up the slack because we have tons of other stuff to do. So that's another thing
Yeah.
that pushes it along the line. You still think you need this person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not like they're not trying,
Yeah.
right? It's very evident if someone's not trying. If someone's trying and they're just not filling the role, how much better could this be without them? Really hard to predict.
So put yourself in
It's
the
freaking hard, man.
absolutely put yourself in the role of the mentor or advisor for a second, right? To another founder sitting here earlier in their career than you are. What's the advice you give them about this?
Wow. Yeah, it's advice that one of my attorneys gave me early on from Dallas, which is hire slow and fire fast.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Use sounding boards. Use an attorney. Describe a situation and have them tell you, hey, I've seen this 400 times. This is what you need to do. And then bear the emotion. But hiring slow is one of the key portions of it. So you have to get ahead. You have to predict this stuff, not get in trouble with needing someone right now. And you'll see there are ways to understand if someone's intrinsically motivated, has the skills before you hire them. Like they're going to invest all their time with you over the next few years and have options in the company. Like they're going to be involved. You won't be able to get them away from projects or trying to give advice or asking for more updates before they're even interviewed or on board. So hiring slow is easy to say. In practicality, you always have to be recruiting because chances are the next hire, even if we haven't signaled it or interviewed for it, chances are we already know them because they're close to the company because they're motivated to do so.
Yeah. Yep. It's great advice. I mean, you've got to, and one of the things that I know I've talked about with founders a lot, I know Peter's done the same thing, is you need to be recruiting that next level of talent, that next level of leadership well before you need them, right? If you're in that situation where you're trying to recruit the person because I need this person in here, I need this role filled, you're going to fall
desperate.
into that desperation hire,
Yep.
right? There's no
matter what, you're desperate.
Yeah. I mean, that's it, and that's you're gonna fall into that by having those conversations early. By, we invest in early stage companies, right? So, you think about like what the typical trajectory of a company, right? That 0 to 1 million is one thing, 1 to 5, 5 to, and you could argue with these numbers, but 1 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 20 or 25, and so on. Each of those steps, this is a hard thing for a founder to get their head around usually. Each of those steps requires something completely different from leadership, which is why you often, when you get a company to say 10 million or certainly 20 million,
yeah, definitely.
You very rarely see that original team still intact. Some of them may be.
Like the skill set changes, and this like jack of all trades person that can do all these things kind of loses a home sometimes.
Right.
I've seen it multiple times.
I didn't have the wisdom in my first business, and we're certainly not at the point where we're bringing on people that haven't been there early on and known us for a while. But
yeah,
what I kind of will say is that when it comes down to it, you've heard of it, like when someone comes out of a corporate job. So if I took that job at IBM and then I was recruited to a startup, I'm not a proven entity that I know what it's like to be an operator at a startup.
Right.
Wholeheartedly.
Yes.
So there's a lot of great talent that could be, but really hard to make the judgment call.
Right.
It's not like going from one corporation to another or one startup to another where you can talk to a founder and talk about that person and kind of the skill sets they have. The people that we recruit now usually have startup experience, startup from the beginning, a failure, even if they weren't a founder, right? They're an operator. And they tend to understand that they're not going to be there through the longevity of a company.
That's right.
In other words, if you can have an honest conversation and say, hey, you're great for this role. Here's how we think it's going to change, but we don't know everything.
Yep.
And by the way, our job's to scale ourselves so we can displace ourselves.
Yep.
But we're going to align your options and your compensation with that.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's more open than like, hey, when we're at 20 million, the job you're doing, you might not be a good fit. You may have to go find something else that makes sense.
Ideally, right? You get the person who, says, hey, we're going to go do this and, we're going to take this thing to 20 million and then, we're going to take it to IPO. And somebody's like, fuck that, dude. I'm here until 10, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I do. I'll get you to 10. I'm not the guy to get you, beyond that point. And I think that's that really ideal kind of fit to just know, here's what I do great, right? You see it in founders too. You have great founders that go from $0 to $1, right?
Yep.
But they will have something set up at $1 that will get that thing to $1 million. right? Or 5 or 10 or 25. But they have no interest in going beyond that.
Yeah.
That's fantastic,
Yeah.
right? And you can't look at that. And I think it's easy to look from the outside as that's some kind of a failure. I didn't want to go beyond that, or the person couldn't go beyond that point. Well, the person may not have wanted to go beyond that point, right?
Yeah.
You get good at it. You're good at that.
That's right.
Like, and if you know that, then that's a skill. And you're like, I'm here for the next one.
That's right.
And there's an ecosystem. We all know there's an ecosystem for people that are in this environment. They know, hey, that's a good person to help that situation out, and it'll be good to 10. And that may be 3-4 years,
And by the way, this is why you have to trust mentors, advisors, and investors.
Yeah.
Right? Because
Yes.
in my first business, we didn't know anything about ourselves, right?
Yep.
You're just passionate. You're just running. Turns out, after 5 years, my co-founder was the 0 to 1.
Yep.
I mean, incredible everywhere beyond, but that's what he loved to live for.
Yeah.
And the company wouldn't have gone anywhere without him and his passion and kind of sales. I was the person that really started to thrive when we started to build a team and a system.
Yeah.
Efficiency, people management, some of these others. But if you ask me, am I the best CEO for a company that's 250 people and above? I'd like to think so. I'll get an executive coach. I certainly have things on my resume that would indicate, but I don't honestly know. And so when we get to 250 and beyond, I'm going to look at people I'm close with that have seen this before to kind of get to it quicker. Like, hey, this is going to be a fit, or hey, watch for the warning signs. If now, look for a transition. Only because I'm a second-time founder am I comfortable with that being a real scenario.
Right.
I wasn't in the beginning. In fact, most of the co-founder strife we had in our first business was around letting go of a company when we were presented with a term sheet or holding on to it. And that is where we figured out, and the flash of insight from the past 5 years came from like, we are these types that have these skills.
Yep.
And we weren't really looking forward to what was next.
I'm gonna just pivot a little bit because I think you're starting to go there a little bit. Scariest day you've had as a founder?
Yeah, we need this.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
This happens to everyone.
Yep.
No matter what.
So by nature, I'm motivated by being preventative, right? So I work out so that I'm not out of shape, not so I could have the beach, right? I like to have my back against the wall. So anything I talk about in like the scariest moments are actually when I came out and did my best. And actually, it goes back to my baseball career. I was a closing pitcher. If the game wasn't close, my ERA was horrible.
Yeah.
When the game is close, I step up into it and trust myself.
Right.
That being said, scary issues. My last company, we were probably at that 35 full-time, 160 part-time around the country mark. And we were running out of money quick. Live event business, cash flow is up and down, right? Not only is it seasonal, but payments to vendors and things like that are tough. And so we were going into a holiday season and we were closing an investment round. And there was a $750K check that was signed for by a family office down in Houston. Not a known entity, but they had all the patterns of doing the right stuff and getting the right reputation. Signed on a Friday, wire supposed to come in on a Monday, right before the holiday season, around Christmas. Wire never came. Everyone goes dark. Wire never comes. Wire never comes. Meanwhile, we were pretty transparent about we needed some checks to come in. We were all celebrating when things got signed. We say, hey, by the way, you have a job here,
right,
to the team. Well, the worst time to not have money is during the holiday season,
right?
From the 15th of December through the end of January. And so no matter what we did, even our inside investors who loved us and cherished us, we're on vacation. They couldn't get to a bank and wire us even if we wanted to. Plus, we were talking about good news, right? And everything was good. So back against the wall, we had to do layoffs. We had to ask people to take cuts.
So these guys just ghosted you. They didn't. This isn't like, and then it showed up the next day.
Oh, no. There was no communication beyond this. Signed.
Man.
That was it? Last time you talked to him.
Yeah. Give us the thing to wire. We'll wire. Monday morning, 9 a.m., I check the bank account. Nothing. Okay, it may take a day or two. Nothing.
Oh, my God.
Oh, that's it.
Greg, this is like...
Yeah.
Like, all right, I've been with Greg when this was going on. We shared an office at one point. Walking up the steps from the parking lot, he's walking down and he's going, we got to go to the local, which is a local pub. And this is like
we got to go drink is what I was saying.
At like 8:30 in the morning. whatever, 9 a.m. And he's like, dude, we're running out of money. Like tomorrow.
Right.
Payroll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But his checks came in. Your check didn't come in. Like, it didn't freaking come in.
It
Right.
didn't come in.
Holy crap.
And we weren't at 0 yet, but we weren't 2 payrolls away. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
the plan on paper is to cut 2/3 of the people, rebuild, ask people for forgiveness when we do get money in, explain the situation we best know how. Because, by the way,
Yeah.
an employee is not going to understand
Right.
sign for wire never came through.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? You understand as a founder now.
It doesn't
Yeah, I
process
barely
anything
understand it
about
as
the
an
family.
investor, right? I mean, it's just,
Right.
it's like it's just so rare
Right.
that something like that happens.
Yeah. And so the after effects of when things like that happen and you don't have the strength to
Yeah.
negotiate with suppliers, to ask forgiveness
Right.
on signing contracts and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
not only is most of the team gone and you're worried about anybody who's left not trusting you, you
Yeah.
also have we had a situation that January where like we were going out finding funds. Obviously, I did not have fun that holiday season. My family could tell,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
they just kind of
That
left me
sucks.
alone.
Right.
And there's no, I put so much effort into trying to raise those money, 100-hour weeks, and like beating your head against the wall.
Right.
Come 3 months later, we could get funds in the door. And so it was just a distraction. But in that
Yeah.
month of January, for example, there was a staffing company in Missouri, because we had a big deal with University of Missouri, the Tigers,
Yeah.
staffing company that had one of my younger employees sign a contract for staffing, like getting people to show up to an event, that had
Yeah.
a little like fine writing that basically said personal guarantee
Oh,
for that
Jesus.
employee.
Yeah.
Now,
I
what
know
is
about
a
that one.
$10,000 contract? They call me and they say, hey, you owe us $10,000. I say, hey, we need 30 days. We have investors, money's coming in. It's not an issue. What do? They go after this individual who's now at another company because we laid them off. And they start saying, hey, we're going to take this out of your fund. So not only are you trying to
You could
raise
put a
money,
lien on their house.
yeah,
Right.
you're trying to explain what happened to investors and employees. You're trying to raise more money by being optimistic. And you're trying to get someone out of trouble that doesn't understand. Why is this group asking me for $10,000? I didn't
Right.
even have an authority to assign a type
Right.
of contract like this.
Okay.
And so it's personal. And
Right.
so that day I went, I paid it off. I made sure it was good personally and waited for reimbursement till March to get some of that stuff done. That's where you're really tested when the mistakes happen.
So that's it. And it's like,
So
and I think
it's a scary 3 months.
It is,
so
right,
you got
yeah.
For me
3
and
months.
anybody that
It
was
wasn't a
around me
day.
at that moment.
yeah, every founder has this moment, right? Where it's a story like that. It's the wire didn't show up. It's a customer contract we couldn't deliver. It's whatever it is, right? Where their entire world is thrown into chaos. Not only the business, right? But their entire life is now
Yeah.
in this like spinning just whirlwind of insanity, right? How did you stop it? And I don't mean necessarily like how did you fix that situation, but how did you stop yourself from letting it get out of control, right? Because I think so much of this is it's that moment of chaos for a founder when all of a sudden everything's going crazy. And the first step is trying to stop your own crazy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
How did you do it? Because
Yeah.
that's where the character is built, right?
Right. And how do you build trust in a system again, right? You build a company, it's great, you're expanding, you bring money in, this shouldn't happen. For me, I think twofold. One, young and single at the time, right? Not a big drag on a rent. I could always move in with a friend, no big expenses. So while I couldn't float salaries for people, personally, I was okay and had no worries, right? I had a bed to sleep in, food to eat, everything like that. The real way that it happened that we got out of this is my co-founder. So, that's the first person you go to with
Right.
news. It's not the wife, the spouse, the partner, the parents, any of that. You go and you have to figure it out. So while I tend to be calm and focused in pressured moments, which is kind of a unique trait, right? But I actually do my best work in those situations. I sat down with my co-founder. We laid out a plan together because we're both business and can read the numbers. But he was the one that stepped up and said, I'm actually the one that's going to let people go. I'm the one that's going to figure this out and talk to these people. And so there were certain things I was afraid of doing
Right.
Letting people down that you trust that don't deserve that stuff, laying people off.
Yeah.
He took that off my plate and said, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Dealing with suppliers
cool.
and making sure that people were treated right on the way out was something I was very comfortable with. If that's on my to-do list, I'll take care of it and go. But he took all the gut-wrenching moments because he wanted to, I guess, feel it a little bit more so that it wouldn't happen to us ever again. And so, how we get through it, there was a lot of times in the pub, maybe not as early as 8 in the morning.
It's underrated, actually. I mean, early morning drinking is actually kind of an underrated thing.
Right. Yeah. Not saying I won't try it.
That's right. Until about 10 a.m., you make great decisions. After 10 a.m., keep the phone away.
Right. And so we'd go to happy hours, we do this stuff. Also, not for nothing, but you hear it on sports teams in the military, but dealing with adversity, you have to have a strong team to do it. And the co-founder relationship, right, or the highest executive level that you trust to kind of figure this stuff out, you have to be strong enough so when that adversity hits, you're not going at each other.
Yep.
And luckily we had that and we rebuilt and we were better than the other because all of this happened and it's the toughest thing to get through because we were expanding and doing so well. The investment was coming in not as a safety bargain. The timing just have to happen because we were getting new contracts and had to expand. And so wrapping your minds around that and what makes it doesn't. And it's great to have it over a beer, right? Because hey man, could you tell this wasn't going to happen? No, I was blindsided. Cool, we'll write a book one day, but now we got to get back to work.
Right. It's funny because you see founders a lot who have co-founders, right? And you find out very quickly what a co-founder is in situations like that, right? In that moment, you've got somebody who clearly was a real co-founder. Like, I'm in this, I'm 100% in this with you. I've had situations, and so many other founders have situations where you call somebody a co-founder, but then you're in that, and they're like, "Yeah, Steve, what are you going to do about this? I mean, that's a pretty crappy situation. You got to go lay off all those people. I got to go."
Yeah.
Right. And that's it. And you really
this
find out if
totally stepped up for you.
That's right. If somebody's
they obviously saw I need to do this.
That's right.
That you tested your relationship and it was there.
Yeah.
That's what you found out. Because to Greg's point, it may not have been there.
Right.
I mean, you obviously knew that, but believed it, but you never know. That could be the next surprise you get, and you're like, oh shit.
So backstory of this, there was actually 3 co-founders to this business, and one I'm very, very close with. Like through college, we were teammates. That person was not in the right moment to be a co-founder with us.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so we actually let that person go 13 months in.
Yeah.
Which means they vested something.
Yeah.
And before we got a big strategic deal, we had to do a cash payment to get them off the cap table, and they bought their first house with it.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
13 months of understanding why 3 co-founders can work. So I had a lot of trust in who stuck with me and me sticking with them. But one of the first things we did is we didn't bring on the right co-founder in the beginning. Now, I think this person would be fantastic at it, but the timing, the person they met, the jobs that they were seeking out that were outside of what we were doing wasn't the right time for her to start a company. And that was a breakup in the beginning.
Right.
If we let that go on for another year, we wouldn't have a company.
Right.
If I didn't have the co-founder we did throughout the rest of it, there wouldn't be a company either. So, it starts with the building blocks. The slowest hire that you could ever make is a co-founder, because that is that's your spouse at work. There's no getting around it.
Yep.
So you're saying this is hard? Are you just this whole thing you've just been telling us this is really hard to do?
Look, I've been networking in New York City since 2012, when I went to business school, right?
Yeah.
My co-founder now and I knew each other. We've been friends since 2014. I watched him grow 2 companies and sell his last. And luckily he had enough trust in me as I did with him, and we had different skill sets. So we were looking for 2 things. One is the founder relationship, to where we're always there for each other and we're always in it, and we're motivated by the right things.
Right.
So if you need to have a baby and you're never going to sell it, we're not going to be friends. And luckily we're motivated by that. The other thing is the disparity of skill sets.
Yep.
I do the business, he does the technology. It is a clear delineation.
Yeah.
Is that hard? It's fortuitous. It was easy to make that decision. Never had a second of regret, and I hope he doesn't either. But he was the only person in the world that I could do that with right now. If I want to start a company and find a co-founder, I'm 2 years out from building the same amount of trust.
Yep.
Even if I know how to look for it.
Peter, we should probably break the news to Steve now that we've got Hutan on as our next guest. And that's actually all about
Oh yeah.
how to, like, when co-founder
tell him?
relationships go bad, it's going to be an awkward thing, but it's.
Yeah. See what he thinks.
That's right. That's right. We're just going to compare notes after. We're not going to tell him anything you said.
This is super important because if you were an investor today, now I know what Greg sees in you for this investment. So if you're an investor today, what would be the most important thing when you look at a deal with two people involved?
Oh, early stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just the co-founder relationship, right?
Yep.
The relationship, the motivations.
Did you say technology?
No.
Did you say like marketing plan, sales, and all that?
I thought, Peter, sorry, I thought you couldn't hear.
Yeah.
No. I'm prompting you. He just said that co-founder relationship.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
And if you're a new founder, you got to think about that. They are looking at you that way.
Mhm.
Like, this is someone who's done it before. He knows what can trip you up. Investors know what can trip you up. That's what they're looking at, right?
I think that throughout, I'll just use it because I was there longer. Throughout my first business, some of our favorite angel investors who gave advice or we went to lean on in goods and bad moments, always started with, how's your co-founder relationship?
Yeah.
Because Steve, you can come up with a new marketing plan and you can raise money, right? You're just figuring out the right vehicle. But how's that? Because 5 years in, $10 million in revenue, that's what's going to break you still now, or it's going to make you stronger. And if you're good, and after a few beers, you still say you're good, and you are good, the investor says, cool, like, let me know. I have, resources that you all can use and your team can go by. But your hiring's not as good.
We can fill the gaps in, but we can't fill the gaps in on that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's great. That's a great insight, I think, around, just, those immediate kind of relationships, right? Because that's what investing is. It's all about trying to assess the founder, the co-founder, the team, the extended team to a certain extent, but it's really the two principles, right? Teams will come and go, but the people starting this thing are not, and you're
right.
And we look at that as an investor all the time. These are now our business partners, right? Yeah. And we've got to have that same level of trust. Run out of time here. I just want to kind of rapid fire sort of quick two things. Best resources you found you're obviously in this business, so this is kind of an interesting question for you, but best resources that you would recommend a founder look at to help develop their skills.
Yeah. Sales and negotiation skills. You can take classes, you can take executive education, 2-day seminar.
Yep.
Knock it out, right? Executive education. There's also plenty of books like Getting to Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You need to sell, you need to be able to negotiate, and you need to understand that everything's negotiable.
Yep.
Every supplier timeline, every employee that asks for something, the goal of having a win-win and being able to do it with someone who also knows how to do it is fantastic. So any resource you want across coaching, executive education, or reading a book on vacation, sales and negotiation.
Yep. Awesome advice. Last thing.
Love it.
And this is just the opportunity for a call out. Person who's had the biggest influence on your career to date.
Yeah. That'd be my father.
No kidding.
Yeah.
All right.
My father was
Mr. Gilman.
Mr. Gilman. He was a student athlete. He paved the path being a captain of the baseball team at Niagara, where he went to school and met my mother. He's also taught me most things that I know about the business, and that's not a knock on business schools that I went to, but also just life experiences. When I have people issues or certain questions, he's the person I go to first. And funny enough, I learn more about his past. He wouldn't talk about this stuff at the dinner table. So there's a separation of business and family, right? And you're doing whatever you can for the family. But when I say, hey, I had to fire this person, he'll give me 4 examples of how he did it.
Yeah.
Make me feel better, make me understand it. Obviously, someone I trust. The thing that he never did was take the leap into the entrepreneurial role. He was always at a comfortable position, went through an acquisition, but as someone who went up through the run. And so I think he's into what I'm doing as much as I am, because it wasn't something that wasn't standardized for what you do at this time. But certainly as a business mentor and as someone I look up to that's paved a good path and raised a good family, my father, for sure.
All right. Well, shout out to Mr. Gilman.
Awesome.
And to the younger Mr. Gilman,
That's right.
Awesome to have you on, and great story. If you want to connect, Steve, what's the best way for people to reach out to you if they want more information on OneRange or just connect with you personally?
So we're at onerange.co, and I'm Steve at onerange.co. Shoot me a note. Happy to talk about upskilling programs, company development, things like that.
Cool. We'll put it in the show notes. And it's onerange.co, not com. So
that's right.
Cool. Put it in the show notes, LinkedIn, anything like that. People.
I'm usually responsive.
Okay.
But I'm guaranteed I'm not going to miss you if you send me a work email.
All right.
Yeah.
Got it. Well, this is awesome. Steve, thanks for being a guest. Yeah. If you liked it, share it, comment on it. All the other things I forgot to, all the other good things, but with the podcast, help us get the word out there and keep spreading these stories about founders and their own journeys. So thanks. See you next time on the Founders Journey podcast.